evening, super educators. A very warm welcome to all of you once again. Today is not only just special, it's not just the repeat session of the topic 4, but also it's the last and final session of our bootcamp journey. So, before we begin, we already say that we always tell you and remind you to mark your attendance, mark your presence in the chat box. So, please do fill the attendance form we'll be sharing in the chat box every now and then. And it's important for your certificates, of course, for the rewards too, and you know that already. And now, to take us through this session again, we once again have our amazing trainer, Ms. Rashal Bothma, an educator, the leader with over 10 years in international classrooms. She has also helped us design a phonics program for learners whose first language is not English because she truly believes that reading is the key that opens door to opportunities. We are happy to have her with us today and to choose the best resource for this and to close the boot camp on such an inspiring note. So, yeah, over to you, Rashal. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, CJ. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're doing well on this Saturday. Like Ms. Chetwan said, it's not only a repeat session, but we are also going to go deeper in understanding. And I'm going to answer a few questions that people had last week. So very excited to get started. And I have a very important question for you. And this time you will be able to read it. So, what is the best superpower? Now, as educators, you are already superheroes. The students look up to you. But if we lived in a different world and this fantasy world, and you could choose a superpower, what would you choose? If you could choose any superpower, what would you choose? Words. Okay, very good. Let's see if we can get some creative ones. Which superpower? Hi, Miss Isha, how are you? Welcome back. I remember a lot of your comments from last week. Alphabets can be a superpower. Words are the best superpower. That's true. Ability to express. Miss Vashali, I agree with you. Miss Unati, stories. No one's going to hope for Miss Education. Yes, absolutely. I can see we are all educators. I think if we asked to be able to understand exactly what children are going through. Miss Deepti, our language. Words are magical. Mr. Isha. Communication skills, amazing. To read everyone's minds, yes. That's more of what I was going for. Miss Priyanka, language, yes. Community, Nupur, I agree with you. Community, to have a good community can be a great superpower. Power of going anywhere to understand a child's thinking and behavior. I can see we're all educators on here. The power, I couldn't read that one. Phonics, sight words, sentences. Communication, knowledge, Ms. Asma, yes, knowledge and wisdom. Okay, expression. Thank you so much for everyone's participation. I think if we asked any other group of people, it would be things like supervision or flying or jumping really high or being able to be invisible. But because we're educators, our answers will always differ because we see the world in a different sight, in a different way. I just have a quick video that I would like to play for you about this. Let's see.
Superpower, what would you like to have? A superpower. So usually, if I or anyone else, if we were given a choice like that, we'd ask for something cool, something interesting. They jokingly talk about it, and at the end of it, Bill Gates would say, if I had a superpower, I would ask for the ability to read faster, to read quickly and grasp, take knowledge. So see the importance of this. Really look at what he says in terms of how he says it. The ability to read more can change us. So for everyone out there, if you're not a reader already, start reading something. The more you read, the better you become. Be great.
It's not a long video. It doesn't have very fancy things, but it has such an impactful message. We as educators always want our students to read, but are you reading? How much are you reading about the society you live in? How much are you reading about new research in education? We can help our students, we can understand our students if we actually put in the effort and do some reading. I know you're exhausted, but also at the end of the day, we want our students to be able to read so that they can be great in society, so that they can make the difference. Reading, phonics, everything we are doing in the lower grades is not only about educating our students or about their academic performance, but it is also about who they will be one day and what impact they will make. You are educating the future leaders of tomorrow. And there, Ms. DP just said, readers today are tomorrow's leaders. And that is absolutely true. Thank you so much. Right. So last week, for those of you that didn't join, for those of you that did join, we spoke about what is phonics. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Phonics is sound and letter connection. Reading, we normally talk about as blending. Blending is the first steps to reading. Then we get spelling, writing, that the first steps of that is segmentation, and then it builds independence. Like we spoke about last week, we really want our students to understand what they are reading, not just know how to read, but to understand. Worldwide, there's about 81% of the students who cannot read for meaning by grade 4. And that is very alarming. So phonics is the basis of all of that. We need to teach them how to read independently, and how to read for understanding, not only to just say the words and know how to blend the sounds together. So why phonics? This is a question we spoke about last week as well. The next slide is about why phonics. So traditionally, we spoke about the letter names, A, B, C, D, and that song that we had to sing over and over. It really hinders learning. It puts the learning back. The students cannot read until they know all the letters and all the sounds of the alphabet. And even if they know all the letters of the alphabet, the letter names, they will not be able to read the words fully because they do not know the phonetic sounds. When we follow phonics, it makes it easier for the students. They know the sounds, so they can easily put words together and break them apart, as we learned last week. And it introduces all the sounds, not only single sounds. So last week, I gave an example of how to read the word cat, which of course all of you know. But remember, for our students, it's like us reading Chinese. Last week, I asked a couple of questions or typed a couple of questions in other languages, and we couldn't answer them. So remember, this is what English is to your students. They are not aware, any language for that matter, our young students do not know. So last week, I gave you an example for cat. C-A-T will never make sense, but cat does. Now we are going to look at this word. So if I sounded out S-H-O-U-T, it is very difficult to know what it is. If you didn't read it and you were just listening, you would not be able to know. But if I sound it out and say sh, ow, t, shout, it is very easy to hear what the word is. Our students are reliant on the sound of the word to understand what it says. So when we read, like I said, out, shout, it makes it much easier for them to put the sounds together. And later, when they are reading the words and writing the words, to then take the sounds apart for our segmentation. So, what is blending? Last week we spoke about this, and I just want to reiterate and reinforce that we should use a sequence. And it doesn't matter which sequence you use, as long as you use the words that go with that sequence. There is many research about different sequences and how they work with the child's brain. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which sequence you follow, but the sequence you follow has to match with the words that you use. Please, if you choose a phonics program, make sure that you're using all the resources from that one. Even if you're getting it from the internet, it's fine. Just make sure they match. Right, and then we had some very interesting questions. So on the next slide, we'll see what I spoke about last week was all the single sounds. And just the progression that we can see with the sequencing is amazing. So once a student learns these sounds in this sequence, they will be able to read 32 words by the first 6 lessons. If your lessons are impactful, powerful, and you make sure that the students understand the sounds, they will be able to read 32 words within the first 6 lessons. It's also very important to know, sometimes it feels repetitive, but if phonics is taught in the same way for every letter, the students get comfortable with the method of teaching. They get comfortable with the way, and they don't have to focus on so many things. They can only focus on the sound that you're teaching in that moment. So last week, there were many interesting questions. I read through all of them. I first want to say thank you so much to everyone who participated, gave advice, asked questions. It was really, really impactful. Now, we had 2 questions. Ms. Ankita asked, ma'am, I wanted to ask, can we introduce words without teaching them vowels? So, very interesting. There are no words without vowels in English except words with Y, like fly and shy. All other words have vowels in. But I understand Ms. Ankita asked, do we need to teach them what vowels are and what consonants are? Research shows, and for me personally, I don't think it is necessary. Vowels is a difficult concept for students to understand, especially in FS1 and FS2. When they get to FS3, their understanding is a bit broader, and we can definitely start to introduce vowels, and we can say what the 5 vowels are. There are many poems and rhymes that you can use to introduce them. But when they are still small, you're most welcome, Ms. Ankita. When they are still small, like for FS1 and FS2, I don't think it is necessary to teach them these are vowels and these are consonants. They're just learning sounds. That's it. Right. And then Ms. Chaitra asked, is it necessary to teach both names of the letter and the sound of the letter? Again, unfortunately, the session is not long enough to go into research, but this is the traditional way of teaching. The letter names and then the sounds. But it really stagnates the learning. The students now have to learn the letter names, and then later have to relearn the sounds. If we introduce the sounds first and not the names, it is much easier for our students to understand the sounds. In their brain, they have pathways, like little pathways that when we walk outside on the park, on the grass in the park, a pathway forms. That's what they have. So once we start teaching capital letters or names of letters first, they have those pathways. Now we have to change that pathway so that the student will connect what they see with the sound instead of what they see with the name. So in short, no, it isn't necessary. It shouldn't be taught that way. But unfortunately, because a lot of parents all over the world are still in that old mindset, it is very difficult to break away from it. In your classroom, I would say do not teach letter names if your context allows for it. But if it doesn't, just try to do your best to always have the sounds right next to the name so the students can learn both at the same time. Thank you, Ms. Asma. I'm so glad. I'm trying to give you a lot of information in a short time. Thank you so much for that. Okay, then the next one, the next slide says diagraphs versus blends. So if you were here last week, you will remember that we spoke about blending diagraphs. That was the title of the slide. And I think that might have been confusing, but Ms. Deepti really took everything together here in her comment. Blending, ch, o, sl, bl, etc. So this is where we blend. Something important that I just wanted to highlight through her comment. So thank you, Ms. Deepti, for the comment. I just wanted to highlight that even though we blend single sounds together, we blend diagraphs together, there's also something specific called blends. First, we'll go to the diagraphs. Remember, a digraph is two consonant sounds, two consonants that make one new sound. It doesn't sound like it did before. So for example, as we said last week, T and H now make th. So you don't hear the sounds singular. S and h make sh. K and h make ch. So they make a completely new sound when it gets to digraphs. Blends are normally taught when we want to have the students excel in fluency. So this is after they understand how digraphs work, how our vowel teams work, how all of these big ideas in phonics work. Then we can introduce blends if we need to. It's not necessary because look at the definition. It says two or more letters where you hear each sound. So blends and family words are normally quite similar. So if we think of the blends, if I say plug, it's p, l, a, g, plug. They don't make a new sound. The blend is still the two sounds. For example, crab, k, r, a, b, crab. You still hear the k and you still hear the r. Swing, s, w, I, swing. You still hear both sounds separately. Even sometimes we can get longer blends like SPL for split, but we can still say them and hear every single sound. Sp, l, t. So it's still sounds that we can hear separately. So don't say that we are learning about blends today. Like we said last time, we can say best friend, best friends, special friends, but blends are not best friends. and they are not special friends because they still make their individual sound even when they are next to each other. I hope that was clear. I know it's getting a little bit technical, but remember, just breathe. Right, the next slide. We were talking about how English is a very difficult language, especially when it comes to the rules. So we spoke about magic E, we spoke about the vowel blends, we spoke about snow, O for snow, and owl for cow, and that they look the same, but they sound different. So then we had some very interesting rules that popped up, and everyone commented they really wanted to give us their opinion. So these are so great. Miss Sheila said when two vowels are walking, the first vowel does the talking, like bead. Miss Priyanka said a word that follows a specific spelling rule. That was for the diagraphs. Yes, it follows a specific spelling rule. When a silent E is added, Miss Monica said, when a silent E is added to the end of the word, it often changes the vowel sound. Miss Gayatri said, simple rules can be introduced. And Miss Sheila said, a long vowel says its own name, for example, in cake. So, Miss Gayatri's rule said some rules can be introduced. Yes, they definitely can. But personally, the easiest rule to introduce is to say, English is tricky. Remember, we spoke about it last week. Our students are extremely small. They are little humans. They are capable of so much, and they're like sponges. And we don't want to fill that sponge with unnecessary information. We don't want to seep up information that they don't need now. So what I really liked was Ms. Monica that said, often changes the vowel sound. It often changes it, not always. When we give rules, we must be sure to not say always. We shouldn't make it a definite because there are words that don't follow those rules. I just want to go into this just for 2 minutes. For example, when two vowels are walking, the first one does the talking. That is true when it's with O, like coat, boat, road, rain, mail, team, seat, peak. But when we start looking at the other sounds, it's not the same. Like breed and spread, bread and spread and red. They all don't have the E sound, even though the E is walking in front. The E, is walking in front. So it doesn't do the talking. Then we also have the other E that sounds like read, that makes an E sound, that follows that rule. So it's very technical. It's very difficult to explain this to a child. So if you give them a definite rule, they will misread or mispronounce some words. That's why in your classroom, maybe somewhere you can have a little sound detective corner where they can write words down or scribble, because not all of them can write yet, but where they can scribble words that they're not sure about. Or they can have a little book when they come to FS3 where they can call it their detective's book, and they can write words down that they are not sure about, that they want to inspect. This way, it also gives them authority. They don't feel scared. They want to inspect it. They want to be a detective. And the same with the long E rule. There are words, the magic E rule. There are words that follow that rule, that when there's an E at the end, it gives the vowel its name, or it gives the sound its name. But it doesn't always work that way. We also have tricky words or some other words where we use the short sound. So rules are very difficult to simplify and to explain because it doesn't work for all the words. Those are wonderful, but just remember to use the word often or sometimes to just simplify it for your students so they don't get stuck in a specific rule that does not count for all the words. So great work. Keep up what you're doing. Just remember to say sometimes. And the sound detective works really well. Right. For the next slide, we already have, I gave you some examples last week. And I just want to say again, just breathe. After that very technical slide, just breathe. So last week I gave you a few examples with the sound buttons or sound clicks, whatever you want to call these gray dashes and dots under the word. So the single one shows the student that it's only a single sound. The dash shows the student that it is a digraph, so they are making a new sound. And then the little arrow at the top or the little bow at the top will tell them that this is a long sound. So the sound, the vowel says its name, or that the sound says its name. This can be translated all the way to very big words, like you can see at the end, firefighter. They can see how many sounds are in the word. They know the sounds if they break it up. And this is just a little scaffold for them, a little crutch that they can use until they are confident to read the words without all of these dots and dashes. Right, the next slide, please. So last week we spoke about strategies in the classroom, blending strategies, and we had a few great ideas. There were actually many, but I couldn't fit all of them on the slide. So I had some ideas on the screen, and then we had wonderful comments that I would like to just go over and explain a little bit, go into deeper context. And please feel free to add more comments at the bottom of the screen if you have something that you didn't get to share last week that you would love to share today. Remember, we're a community and we're learning from each other. So I'm sure the other teachers would love to learn from you and what works in your classroom. So first of all, I want to say Ms. Isha said to use the multisensory approaches, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. This is very important. As we all know, we have students in our classrooms that are visual learners. We have students in our classrooms that are auditory learners and that are kinesthetic learners. Some of them are lucky and they are all three, but others are not so lucky. So you can use many stories, rhymes, games. You can take the students outside, use finger tapping for each sound. Thank you, Ms. Kamla. That's a very good idea. You can take your students outside to identify beginning sounds or to identify how many sounds are in a word. It can go from easy to very, very complex. Ms. Ruchita said, we make flashcards and students find the words and by finding the letters. So I assume it's picture cards, or word cards, and they find them. And then they go and look for the individual sounds to make them. This is a wonderful activity to also teach collaboration. They can do peer reviewing, where they can make sure that their friend is doing the right thing. Then we also had Pictionary, hide and seek, musical chairs from Ms. Ankita. These are all very hands-on. The students will be busy and students really enjoy it. I know you all know, but the busier they are, the more colors they have, the better it will be. And as I previously said, it's good to use similar strategies. So maybe every couple of weeks you can change. Ms. Parna, I hope I'm saying your name right. Find the partner a very nice matching activity. If you, I forgot what I was saying. So if you change up your activities every couple of weeks and then keep them the same for, say, 3 or 4 weeks and then change them up again, that would also be perfect, because the students do get bored if it's very repetitive. But the new words also spark that curiosity in them. And then the last comment, those who knew the rules, Miss Aparna, thank you. Yes, feed the monster. I'm sure the monster is hungry for a certain sound, and then you feed the monster that sound. Word hunting. Excellent ideas here. I think you should send us a video of your classroom so we can see. I'm sure your students are very happy. The last comment says, those who knew the rules of phonics can focus on vocabulary and fluency. And this is also something that is very important and amazing about phonics. You can use it for your very low ability students, and you can use it for your higher ability students. And you can use the same resources for all of them. You just extend the words, or you make the words smaller. You add more digraphs to the word, or you remove some digraphs from the words. So don't keep all your students on the same level in phonics. If there are students that are ready to move on, let them move on. If there are some students who are not ready to move on yet, keep them where they are supposed to be and make sure that that foundation is there. Because once they have that and they've grasped it, their progress will they will fly with their progress. And that is something that we really want. We don't want learners that are not confident. Something else that I also wanted to add, jelly bag tracing, Ms. Asma, Ms. Neha, solve tracing. Yes, that's excellent for fine motor skills, letter formation, also letter recognition if you pair them up. Very great ideas. We play a digraph hunt where they look for the missing digraph in the word through flashcards. Ms. Priyanka, that is a wonderful idea. I'm sure the students enjoy that. I hope everyone's jotting down all of these ideas from the wonderful educators out there, because they're really amazing. So as I said last week as well, the previous slides were heavy, I know, but it's good for you to have that knowledge so that you can assist the students in your classroom that are high achievers. And it's also good to know it so that you don't mislead your students as well. Okay, I hope that was everyone's ideas, because we're going to move on to segmentation now. So as we spoke about last week, segmentation is where we pull words apart. It's not only, phonics is not only about putting the sounds together and reading the words, but it is also about writing. We want them to write sentences independently. So in order for that to happen, they need to know the word, they need to know the sounds, and they also need to know how many sounds are in a word. So just a quick recap, as I explained, dog, they can use their fingers, they can use blocks, they can use dots. There are many, many different ways to do this. And then also fish, for example. So we can use this with digraphs, we can use it with our vowel blends. And I quickly have a question just to recap to see if everyone was listening last week. Do we teach segmentation after we've taught all the sounds, or do we teach it hand in hand with blending? When do we teach segmentation? During every phonics lesson, or only after students know how to read? Who can answer that question? Hand in hand. Good job, Ms. Priyanka. Let's see who has a different opinion about this. Maybe everyone's answers are the same. That's why only one came through. Yes. Yes, Ms. Vaishali, we teach hand in hand. Can you think how overwhelming it will be for a student to learn how to read? Yes, Ms. Ankita, every phonics session. Good job. To learn how to read, and then all of a sudden they have to learn how to take all of the words apart. Ms. Shaimalata, I hope that was right. Yes, hand in hand, hand in hand. Shayamlata, yes, hand in hand. We need to teach it hand in hand. The students will be so overwhelmed if we teach them how to read all the words and now we're teaching them how to break them apart. It will be confusing. So if we teach it systematically in the same sequence, that is really beneficial for our students. And in the next slide, you can see some wonderful strategies that the teachers shared last week. I thought this one from Miss Monica was really, really wonderful, allowing students to build by adding or changing letters. And then also Miss Rina, she took the real life situation of the students and she related it to segmentation. So the students can walk around in the classroom and see which words they can pull apart. For example, fan. I see a fan. How do I write fan? Fan. So the segmentation part of the lesson doesn't have to be reading only. It can still be hands-on. It can still be done in an interactive way. Students can still use stories. You can read a story to the students, pause, ask them how many sounds does this word have? Can we use our fingers to talk the word out? Can you place your blocks on the table? It can be very interactive. And then Ms. Hema said, regular practice makes the child perfect. And that is why I asked the question, when do we teach segmentation? It needs to happen every time that you have a phonics lesson. I understand that some schools have different timetables and it's not always possible to teach a phonics lesson every single day. But you can teach phonics every single day without actually having a phonics lesson with these fun activities. Taking it from the classroom, taking it from books, videos. When you're playing a video, you can pause the video and ask them to read. There was a comment, but I missed it. I'm so sorry. Use a buddy for this game. One child says the word and another one says how many sounds. Thank you so much, Ms. Priyanka. That is a wonderful idea. I think that will make for a very interactive classroom. Excellent. Then the next slide is about sight words. So sight words are always a little bit difficult to teach. It's normally a lot of repetition. Like I said last week, we identify the regular parts of our lesson. There you can see next to the tree where I've added the words from last week. You can teach them the regular part of the lesson and the tricky part of the lesson. But then we also had these wonderful insights. So Ms. Pooja said they use sight words as passwords to enter the classroom. Each child has to read it before they enter. That is a wonderful idea. And that also brought me to think you can use it in so many ways. Hopscotch. You can use frog jumps where they jump on every word. You can integrate it with your physical development lessons where students run to the one end, say the word, come back. It can be taught really interactively. We call them smart words. Ms. Gayatri, that's wonderful because tricky words, sight words, especially tricky words will make the students a bit apprehensive. They would not want to actually read them. They'll get afraid of them. So that's a wonderful one, smart words. Miss Monica makes sentences on a daily basis. That is so important. So when you make sentences, you'll have the blending, you'll have the segmentation, you'll have the sight words. It's every single part of phonics wrapped into one. And then Mashila said we encourage them to find out and circle sight words from the newspaper or in small passages which they learned from a story. This is excellent. It's a free resource. Everyone gets a newspaper or an advertisement sheet or pamphlet. This is excellent. Thank you, Mashila, so much for sharing it, especially for schools that don't have a lot of resources. This is excellent. And then Ms. Ruchika said we teach 8 sight words in our school. Now, I am not sure because last week we spoke about per week. So I don't know if this was for a per week session, but basically we can teach 0 to 2 sight words per week for FS1, 2 to 4 sight words for FS2 per week, and then 4 to 6 sight words for FS3 per week. This is honestly something that will be up to you at the end of the day. You know, as educators, sometimes we will have a class that really learns quickly, and sometimes we have classes that don't. It will be based on what your students can learn and their ability, their strengths, and also, of course, about the syllabus that your school is following. But it is important to show them as many as possible that they can actually grasp, not just showing them and they're not learning, because it makes reading easier. And reading is all about building the confidence of our students. Right, and then I just want to thank everyone for participating so much. So if anyone wants to add anything else, please do as I go through the last slide for today. So we spoke about the phonics lesson and the progression. We have made shape bingo cards too for the whole class. Thank you, Miss Asma. We use small storybooks to circle sight words games. Miss Anita, we first clear sight word sounds that increase the confidence of the students and they are eager to learn more. Wonderful. It's good to motivate them. Colorful buttons. Thank you, Miss Isha. Wonderful ideas. So as we spoke about the phonics lessons last week, we said there should be a kind of a structure to it where we introduce the new sound, then we blend the new sound into the words, then we use the segmentation to pull the word apart where the students can then write it, and tricky words. Then we also said, remember, it should be a short lesson, multi-sensory, very simple to complex. We review it often and we link reading and writing. But I'm sure you can remember the video from last week where we played many games in between. So when I am telling you about the structure of the lesson, these are the main points that should be included. These are not the only points. So for example, when we introduce the new sound, you can do it through a story. You can do it through a game where they have to recognize the sound between other sounds that they've learned before. You can do it through a scavenger hunt. So there are many ways to introduce the new sound. The same with blending. You can use a game or a more structured approach. It is up to you. Normally with games, you can either have the students line up. One student can say the one sound, the next student can say the next sound in the word, the next students can say the next sound. So student 1 will say n, student 2 will say ah, student 3 will say p, and then everyone together will say nap. So Ms. Nabila said, how do you spell the sight words? Is it the letter names or the rounds or sounds? I'm sure. Can we please go to the previous slide? Thank you so much. So in sight words, there are no specific rules. As you can see here at the bottom, where we have me, they, where, they don't follow any specific rule. So with me, for example, that is the E, so that is the letter name, yes. But with they, we don't say the letter name. It's just an A sound. So these don't follow any specific rule. It is just words, unfortunately, that we have to memorize. And as I said, English is a very tricky language. I used to say to my students in my classroom that English is a silly language. And I hope I'm not offending anyone. But it is. There are no fast rules for these tricky words. So I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry I can't be of much help. But normally we can identify the regular parts of the word, so the students can start to identify, if you use the buttons and dashes, what they can sound out and what sounds different, the tricky part of the rule. That's it. Thank you so much. Let me go back to the next slide. So as I said, with blending, you can also use students to say one sound at a time. You can have interactive parts of your lesson here. And it doesn't have to be only about reading the word. It can also be interactive, but you should have some form of text. You need to have the words up, even if it is in your handwriting on the board, one word at a time, so that the students can focus on one thing at a time, especially in FS2, FS3, and the beginning of FS1, FS2, and the beginning of FS3. So it's exceptionally important to have one word to focus on and not all the words. That's why word cards work really well. Then for the next one, the segmentation, you have to use the same words that you blended, because that will help their neural pathways that I spoke about earlier. Again, here it can also be sounds. You can use the cards, you can use the word, and they can dot, like we said before, where they identify how many sounds. We had some lovely examples now in this session as well. And then, like I said, the tricky words can be added in the beginning of your day in circle time. You can ask them to look for it in newspapers, like we had that example. You can also ask them to match the words. There are many ways to do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be in your phonics lesson, because it is not related to the sound that we are teaching, but you can integrate it. Remember the word we learned this morning, the. Can anyone use it in a sentence with a word that starts with n? So the nut was nice, for example. This is what they will say. Which of those words can we write? Oh, yes, very good. Can you please sound out the word nut? Nut. So you can really incorporate every section of your phonics lesson through just normal conversation. Then I want to get to the comments here. Last week, as I said, I gave you the first slide was just random languages, some Chinese, some Portuguese, Afrikaans, different languages. And I asked if you felt frustrated. And these two top comments really linked well. One was at the beginning of the session and one was at the end of the session. So Ms. Kashish said, yes, many times when the things are not clear or if we are not interested. That was the most important part of that sentence for me. If we are not interested. If you pick up a book and it doesn't entertain you within the first 5 minutes, you will not finish that book. And that's how it is with our students. If they find it boring within the first 10 seconds, they will not listen. And then Ms. Pooja said, We should come down to their level to make our topics more interesting. They only understand when it's interesting, like including games and activities. And that really ties in well. I felt like Ms. Pooja answered Ms. Kashish's not question, but statement. And that's what I mean with the lessons as well. Yes, you have the structure, and it sounds very structured, but you can use activities and you can make it hands-on. And then the last and most important part about phonics is to build a relationship with your students, like Ms. Zara said here. And like Ms. Isha said, we need to celebrate the milestones, no matter how small they are. Our students are finding it difficult. Some of them do not have the confidence, and reading is all about confidence. When should we introduce phonics to a child, Miss Versatile? I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I'm so sorry. But this varies. There's lots of research that says only to introduce it by age of 5. There's other research that says by the age of 5, it's too late. Children really have the most impactful time of learning through the ages of 2, or say 1 and 5. I saw a video the other day of a child. Her mom is teaching her phonics at home, and she's probably a year and 6 months old, and she can read sounds. So I don't think we can start too early. I just think it is about how we are teaching it. If we are teaching all of these spelling rules and all of these heavy vocabulary like vowels and consonants, it will not be fun for them. But if we just introduce it in everyday life, oh, this is an apple, apple. This is a book, book. It will be so fun for them. And I don't think there is a better time to start than immediately. That is my personal opinion. And research also says by the age of 2, they should be learning how to read in the sense of sounds, phonics, and all of that. Writing is a different story. Students' hands develop at a very gradual pace until the age of 5. So normally between 0 and 2 years, they need to just do shaking, rattling, pulling, tearing, playing with balls, some sensory toys. Between the ages of 3 and 4, they should be threading, playing with sand, drawing in the sand, using their fingers, working on those fine motor skills. And only by the age of 5 to 6 should they start to write, especially with pencils and so on. So when you do segmentation in a lesson where the students are still young, they don't always have to write the word. They can also write it with a marker because it's a bit thicker. Ms. Gunjan said students should repeat with multisensory practice, see it, flashcards, say it, repeat the sound, and write it, trace it, make it, clay or sand. Yes, that's a very good technique to use exceptionally well, but especially when they are reading it, make sure that they are saying the sounds, else it might also just become a memorization game, and that is also part of the traditional way of teaching. So that's a wonderful thing. First, we should start with phonics groups. Can you please elaborate on this question? Do you mean placing them in ability groups for phonics? I'm sure that's what you meant, but I'm not sure. While we are waiting for her to elaborate on her question, I just want to go back to the look, say. When they are looking, they need to say the sounds as well and not only the word. Else, like I said, it borders on the traditional method where students are memorizing words and not reading the sounds. Okay, I'm going to answer that question as I understood it. Should we teach them in groups? I assume that ma'am meant to that we should teach them in ability groups. So this would be ideal. If we could have classrooms that are not as big, or if you're working in a school where you can collaborate with your colleagues that are in the same grade. For example, if you have 4 classes in FS2, you can decide to have phonics at the same time every day, and you can divide your classes into different ability groups. So this is something that worked very well. It's difficult to get approval from the school or from the principal, but maybe take a chance, speak to your head of department, see if you can get approval. And you can always reach out to me. I can explain in more detail because our time is running out, but I will give you a quick overview of what I mean. So if you have, let's say, 100 students in your 4 classrooms, but you have some students in your classroom that are high, some students who can only read or can only identify 3 single sounds, some students who can read a whole book, and other students who can only read a sentence. It is the most beneficial way to have them in their groups. So for example, if you have your colleagues and you decide that you want to try this, one colleague can take the lowest group and these students will only learn the single sounds. The next colleague can take the middle group and these students will only learn the diagraphs. But remember to still keep repeating the single sounds. So you're still having them every day. The next group can be for students who are starting to read sentences. They are a bit higher, so they can start to form their own full sentences. They can use the sounds to sound out firefighter, difficult words like that. And then your last group can be where they are reading for comprehension, where they are reading for meaning. It is really a wonderful way, and there's not enough time to go in on it. Maybe we can have a session on it some other time, but there's also, it doesn't have to be differentiated like that. Maybe you're in a school where most of the students are struggling. Then each teacher can keep her students that are high achievers, that are able to read and write independently. She can keep those 3 students in her classroom, and the rest of the students can be divided according to their ability, where some students will read set 1. Sorry, can we go back to the slide where it says about the single sounds? Thank you so much. So maybe some students are only in the first set, the purple sounds. So those students can go to teacher number 1 and they can learn those single sounds. The next teacher can teach the next set of single sounds. The next one, the next set, and the next one, the next. So it doesn't have to be such big gaps between single sounds, diagraphs, sentences, and comprehension, but you can also differentiate it on a smaller scale where you only have students who are learning these sounds. It is very technical to do this, but it is really, really an amazing way for students to learn. They can make more words with phonics rather than the sequence A to Z. Yes, Ms. Asma, exactly. That's why we are fighting for phonics. Yes, phonics also helps in writing. Like we said, with the segmentation, that is where writing comes in. So as soon as students can divide the words and pull the words apart and have the sounds like dog, d, g, this is when they are writing it independently. So they will say d, and they will write d, and they will write g, and they will write g. Then they can put a finger space, then they can write is, I, s, and so on and so forth. So that will really help them with writing as well. Thank you so much for going to that slide. Yes, and that's it. I hope that was all the questions. If you have more, I don't know if we have more time, but thank you so much for everyone who participated. I hope I helped. And I know when we spoke about the ability groups now, there wasn't really a lot of time, but I hope I explained it in a clear way. And as I said, you can always connect with me, and the Caboodle team's always there to help you if you need some more explanation. Daily practice where parents, teachers are working hand in hand will help the child to be a great reader. Yes, Miss Ankita, that is exceptionally true. And you can also motivate your parents. Maybe they don't know. Give them some ideas. Share your expertise. Thank you so much, Miss Meghna. I'm glad it was informative and interactive. Thank you so much. You're most welcome. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Rashal, ma'am, for this inspiring session yet again. Thank you so much for all the super educators for attending this and being participative in this session. What a great wrap up to our Bootcamp 2025 journey. A big thanks to all of you for your consistent energy, participation, and willingness to learn together. As we had informed you earlier, we are eagerly waiting for you to share your learning outcomes video so that we can also understand whatever you have learned out of this whole journey of the bootcamp. And again, like I told you earlier, the representatives from our organization will be coming to your schools, or I have already shared the number in the description. You can send us the videos on that number as well, on the WhatsApp on that number. So these things will help us to shortlist the names, the teachers for our certification and award ceremony that is going to happen on 4th of October, and it will be led by none other than Dr. Swati Popat Vats, the president of PCA India. Now, let me quickly show you the categories. I told you earlier as well in the last session, I showed you the categories. Let me show it again to you. So, the reward categories are best creative implementation, active and consistent participation, good ideas, and good answers. So, these are the four categories in which we will be shortlisting the names of the teachers, and we will be felicitating them. um, we encourage each one of you to participate because your voice, your reflection, and your learnings actually matters to us. Also, we want to share one more news that we will be sharing a worksheet after this session. Shortly you will be receiving the same way you were getting the links for the session. You will be getting the worksheet as well. That is just something to know how you are doing and how you have learned everything in these sessions in the boot camp. So with that, yeah, Itcha ma'am, I have already sent the number in the description box. I have already shared it in the description box. I will share it again. We will just send it in the comment box as well for you all so that you can send your videos. All right. With that, I will take your leave. It was such an amazing journey, and it was really amazing to see you all. It was great to have you all again and again for all the boot camp sessions. And see you all on the day of celebration. It's really been a wonderful journey to have you all on the sessions. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. See you on 4th of October.